Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Arevalo, and I'm from Montefiore Nyack Community Health and Wellness. And today we are going to be talking about diabetes. And if you ask why, it's because, November is diabetes month, but that doesn't matter. It's like, to me, it feels like diabetes is every day because there are so many people with diabetes nowadays. And then there are so many more who might have diabetes and they don't know yet. And then there is also something called pre-diabetes, is when your sugars are not high enough to be diabetes, but also not within the normal limits. So definitely there is a lot to talk about. And that's the reason why this November, all of our community chats are going to be dedicated to the topic of diabetes. Today, we're going to start talking about weight and wellness. Usually when we talk about diabetes, it's all about weight. They tell you have to lose weight. You don't have to eat this. You don't have to eat that, and it gets a little cumbersome. But today with us, we have Melissa Kinney. It's one of our dietitians until today, because tomorrow she'll be flying away from us. So no, don't start. And today she's gonna give us her advice on how to manage diabetes. And this is again gonna be part 1 of 3. I'll let you know later what parts 2 and 3 are going to be. But without further ado, Melissa, hi, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. And if you don't
Thank
mind
you.
giving us a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name's Melissa. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm also a certified diabetes care and education specialist. Before we jump into the presentation today, I just want to talk a little bit about like what brought me here and why I like to talk about this topic because, when we were brainstorming ideas to talk about for Diabetes Month, I jumped on this because I think, like you were talking about before, a lot of times when we talk about diabetes management, the first thing that you'll hear from providers is you have to lose weight, you have to lose weight. And that can be challenging for some people or might really be a roadblock, right? So figuring out ways that are going to be empowering and inclusive and really body positive, right? So that we can invite all people to really get healthier and feel better about their diabetes and help manage their diabetes in a way that feels good for them. So this is something that I'm really passionate about and I love talking about. And I hope you get something out of it too.
Yeah, and also God willing prevent diabetes as well, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
pretty much is like when you are at that edge where you might have pre-diabetes, or there is so much diabetes in your family, you're at a higher risk. You can also do something to prevent it. So whatever you do for diabetes, it also helps you to prevent diabetes. That's the point here. So go
Yeah.
ahead, Melissa. I know you have a PowerPoint for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what we're going to talk about things, and honestly, a lot of times when I'm talking to other people, I'll tell them this is basically the same advice that I'm really going to give for anyone, right? This is really general information, and it definitely can be used for pre-diabetes as well. And like we'll talk about a little bit later on in my presentation, it really is about low-hanging fruit too, and maybe picking a couple small things that are really going to make a big difference too. It doesn't need to be like total overhaul of everything that you're doing in your life. And those little things can make a big difference too.
As I like to say, one is better than zero. So even if you just do one thing after today,
Mhm.
you just pick whichever one it is, it's going to help you no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope some of the ideas that I share here, it's like maybe, you pick and choose with everything that we do, right? We hear a presentation, we might pick and choose a couple little things that are really going to make a difference and see how that feels for you. So, okay, let me share my presentation. Oh, wait, I have to share my screen. Duh. That helps. Okay. Share my screen. Okay. All right. Let me back up now so that we're in the right. Okay. Can you see my screen okay? I think we're
We
all
do.
right.
We do.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome. Okay. So, like I said, let me just get Okay, let me back up. So, like we were talking about today, we're going to talk about wellness, not weight. How to talk about diabetes management from a health at every size lens. And this is kind of like our roadmap for today. We're going to talk about what's diabetes. We're going to discuss the relationship between weight and health. We're going to review what Health at Every Size is and what intuitive eating is and how to apply its principles to diabetes management. And then I'm hoping at the end we can talk about not only, I wrote about discussing gentle nutrition techniques to keep your blood sugar at goal, but really I'm going to talk about a few techniques that you can use that it's not just nutrition that are going to help keep your blood sugar at goal and also help you to feel good about the changes that you're making. So that's our roadmap for today. So I thought I would start off with, since I'm the first presentation for Diabetes Month, is what is diabetes? And so today we're going to be talking primarily about type 2 diabetes, because type 1 diabetes, that used to be called juvenile diabetes, right? That's really when we used to call it juvenile diabetes because it was commonly diagnosed in children, and that's when the body makes no insulin at all, and you need insulin in order to keep your blood sugar at goal. With type 2 diabetes, that's what we're going to focus on today, because that we can really make health changes that can make an impact. Type 1 also, but type 2 is primarily where we see those health changes that can really make an impact on your blood sugars. So type 2 diabetes, it's this condition that keeps your body from properly processing sugar. And really there's two things that are going on. So the first piece is that maybe the insulin in your body isn't working well. We call that insulin resistance. So when sugar goes into the blood, insulin comes out of the pancreas and grabs the sugar, and insulin, just like in this picture, is kind of like the key to the lock that opens a door and puts the blood sugar into the cell where it can be used by the body. But if that insulin isn't working so well, we call that insulin resistance. That's one of the reasons why someone's sugars might start going up. The second reason why your sugars might be going up is because your body just isn't making enough insulin. And that's why some people with diabetes need to inject insulin. So really those two pieces that are going on, and this can lead to a buildup of sugar in the blood. And then that can ultimately lead to complications if that sugar is high for a prolonged period of time. So just thought we would start with that, a little explanation of what diabetes is. And I wanted to start with this. So can you tell by looking at these two pictures, right? We have two different people here. Can you tell who eats more dessert, who eats more vegetables, who eats fast food more often, who exercises more regularly, who drinks soda more often, or even who has diabetes? And the truth is, we can't tell just by looking at someone, right? We don't know what someone's healthy behaviors is just by their body size. Because your weight doesn't tell the whole picture, and your weight is not a healthy behavior. So I have this picture on the side, like what we think impacts health is diet, exercise, and weight. But we have a whole bunch of other factors that really contribute to health. And that's including, but not limited to, genetics. We talk a lot about social determinants of health, right? Where we live, what schools we go to, our culture, what foods we eat, how we eat them. We'll talk about that today. Movement, physical activity, sleep, stress, all of those contribute to our health as well. It's not just about weight and that number on the scale. So therefore, I would like to talk a little bit about Health at Every Size. If you haven't heard of it, then I think this is a good place for us to start. It's really shifting that focus from weight management. You have to lose a certain amount of weight to be healthy, and really promoting healthy behaviors. So it's not against weight loss. It's not saying that you shouldn't lose weight, but it's saying that you can start incorporating those healthy behaviors and be healthy at any body size. It advocates for equitable, non-biased care for all people. It rejects the notion that all people should and can lose weight just because they're in a certain body size. And it doesn't mean, and I think this is a common misconception when we talk about health at every size, it doesn't mean that you are healthy at every size, but rather that you can be healthy at every size. So incorporating these healthy behaviors can help you to be healthy at any size, rather than just because you're any size, you're healthy. And Health at Every Size has 5 guiding principles. They're weight inclusivity, health enhancement, eating for well-being, respectful care, and life-enhancing movement. So those are kind of like the tenets of health at every size. Today, we're going to talk about management of diabetes from a health at every size lens. We're going to focus mostly on nutrition and what I like to call joyful movement. But we're also going to touch a little bit on monitoring blood sugars, taking medications, managing stress, and getting enough sleep. And just a plug for the other two classes that we have coming. Next week, we have a class that focuses primarily on nutrition for diabetes. And then the week after, it's the other non-food factors that influence diabetes. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on these today from a health at every size lens, but we have more coming about all of these topics. So join in next week at 12 o'clock. Okay, nutrition. There are so many mixed messages out there. I looked online just to get some ideas of some crazy diets that we see, especially on the internet, like this one. Lose 10 pounds in 1 week. That's crazy. Way too much weight. I don't know what this guy thinks the hot water is going to release from the lettuce, but he's promoting something with the hot water and the lettuce. And then finally on the right, we have this egg diet, a day 10 of an egg diet. So really out there, we see so many mixed messages about nutrition. And what's most important is getting our information from a reputable person or a reputable website. So a dietitian nutritionist would be a great place to start. And also resources like the American Diabetes Association is another good place to start, because if we go online, there's going to be so many mixed messages and probably a lot of restrictive diets, which we're going to talk about right now. So many people will turn to restrictive eating when they're diagnosed with diabetes. And I hear this so much. I see a patient here who has just been diagnosed with diabetes, and they've completely cut out carbohydrates. And the truth is, it's really hard to maintain that restrictive diet for a long period of time. And what we see over time is when someone's trying to maintain that restrictive diet, it can lead to yo-yo dieting, it can lead to frustration, and really ultimately an unhealthy relationship with food. And that binging and restricting can also cause large fluctuations in blood sugar levels. So I kind of like to think of this as a pendulum. So on one side, we have restriction, and on the other side, we have binge eating, right? So maybe on one side, someone's being really restrictive. They're not eating the amount of food that they need, the amount of carbohydrates they need. They're eating very little. They aren't listening to their food cues. Maybe they're going many long stretches without eating. And then on the other side, we kind of have that binging, which is where someone feels like very out of control with food. They're eating really often. They're eating past fullness. And sometimes we can kind of go back and forth between that restriction and that binging. Where we really want to be is somewhere in that middle ground where we feel hunger and fullness cues, we're mindful eating, and really what we're going to talk about today is that intuitive eating, where you decide for yourself, based on your blood sugars and how you feel, and gentle nutrition, what's going to be best for you. So, even though that pendulum might be going back and forth, what's really ideal is somewhere in the middle, that you're fueling yourself so that you feel good throughout the day, so that your blood sugars are staying stable, you're reducing complications. So what is intuitive eating? So intuitive eating and health at every size really go hand in hand. Intuitive eating is an alternative to calorie counting, to carb counting, to restrictive diets. It's a way of eating that focuses on listening to your own body. So instead of following these strict diet rules, you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full, and you choose foods that satisfy you. Today, we're also going to talk about that gentle nutrition piece, right? So it's important when you have diabetes that we're also eating in a way that's going to help keep your sugar stable. And we're going to talk about how that all works together. So intuitive eating was developed by these two dietitians. Their names are Evelyn Tribole and Elise Reich, and this is the copy of their newest book. They're on the 4th edition right now. And their book really revolves on these 10 key principles of intuitive eating. The first is to focus on habits that promote health instead of weight or weight loss. We talked a little bit about that already today. Determine portion sizes based on hunger and fullness, right? So serving size is just a suggestion. That might be a good place for you to start, but depending on what's going on with your day, maybe that serving size that's on the box isn't necessarily going to be the best amount for you. So determining your portion size based on that hunger and fullness. Incorporating all foods into a healthy eating plan. And I think that incorporating all foods into an healthy eating plan and avoid labeling foods as good and bad really go together. I think a lot of times I hear from my patients a lot. I ate good yesterday. I ate bad yesterday. I was good yesterday. I was bad. And we're really assigning that morality to what foods we're eating. And the truth is, what we eat does not make us a good or a bad person, right? We can include all foods, and all foods have a place. Practice savoring your food. So when we slow down and really enjoy our food and are able to identify our hunger and fullness, then it makes it easier to identify our hunger and fullness, right? It's a practice. Recognizing potential emotional triggers for eating. So we eat not just because we're hungry, we eat for a variety of reasons, but the more that we can practice savoring our food, using a hunger meter to identify our hunger and fullness, and recognize, oh, you know what? I'm eating right now out of boredom. Maybe I'll go do something else that's going to be better for me and better for my health. Reinforce that bodies come in all shapes and sizes. Encourage movement as a way to feel good and gain energy and strength. And then finally, this gentle nutrition piece. So encouraging following an eating plan that promotes health and tastes good, but then also allows for favorite or highly enjoyable foods, sometimes even if those foods aren't considered healthy. All foods have a place. So we're going to focus on these principles in order to talk about managing diabetes. So the first one is honor your hunger, and we're going to break these down a little bit as we go along. Honor your hunger, practice mindful eating, focus on gentle nutrition, and find joyful movement. The first is honor your hunger. So I think sometimes we forget this, right? That hunger is a physiological response. It's just like breathing or going to the bathroom. So, like you wouldn't question yourself if you had to go to the bathroom for a second time in the hour. You wouldn't question yourself, right? But sometimes when we're eating, we're like, why am I hungry? I just ate an hour and a half ago. Instead of remembering that it is a physiological response. I have this little picture of the underwater scene here because I think sometimes when we are being restrictive with our eating, it's very similar to holding your breath underwater. So when I find someone's, been very restrictive for a while and then they finally start eating again, it's a normal physiological response to maybe overeat past fullness, right? It's the same thing as when you're holding your breath underwater and then you come up to breathe, you breathe heavier, right? So, and we don't really want that, right? We want that steady eating over the course of the day, and we want those steady blood sugars over the course of the day. So one way to honor your hunger is to just take a few deep breaths before grabbing something to eat. Tune into your body's cues. This might be a time for you to say, you know what, actually, I'm not even hungry right now. I was thinking of grabbing this, but it's more just because I like to eat while I'm studying for a test. Maybe instead I'll go for a walk around the block and then I'll sit down and I'll study for my test. Or maybe it's I'm extra hungry because I've been studying for this test and I do need a little extra something. Let me tune in and see what's going to be best for me to eat right now. Honoring your hunger also means to eat when you're hungry, right? Eating regularly over the course of the day can help to help keep your blood sugar stable and to help you to feel those hunger and fullness cues better. And then finally, eating meals that are balanced and satisfying, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. So that's the first piece, honoring your hunger. A hunger fullness scale is a good way to get in touch with your hunger and fullness. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to use it at every single meal. It's a practice. It takes time to check in and see how you're feeling. So you can check in on your hunger and fullness before, during, or after your meal. I like to give it as a project or maybe a goal for patients to work on in between sessions to just start at where they're feeling. Check in with yourself. How hungry, how full are you? Maybe you don't want to wait until you're at very, very hungry and your stomach's growling and you're hangry to eat. Maybe you want to start when at that first sign of hunger, you can start thinking about what am I going to eat? What am I going to have for my next meal? And then maybe you probably don't want to wait, eat until you're stuffed, right? So finding that middle ground and eating slow and saving your food is another way that you can really get into your in touch with your hunger and fullness. And I love teaching the technique of taking a half time. So basically you have your plate and you split it in half. Doesn't mean that you can't eat the second half, but if you split your meal in half, then you can kind of eat through that first half, take a breather, put your fork down, maybe have something to drink and check in with yourself and just see how you're feeling. Am I hungry? Am I full? Am I enjoying what I'm eating? Am I not enjoying what I'm eating? Just give yourself that time to check in. So, and then these are some examples, like the one on the left is the hunger fullness scale that I use. And then there's a couple other examples that I found that other dietitians have made. So different ways that you can kind of use the hunger fullness scale. And like I said, it's a practice. So the second piece is to practice mindful eating. So sitting down and savoring your food. So I like to think of the 3 S's: sit down, slow down, savor your food. Those are the 3 S's of mindful eating. It's much easier to practice mindful eating if you're not skipping meals. If you're skipping meals, then you might be hangry. It's going to be really hard to sit down and really enjoy your food. You might be so hungry that you're just kind of eating very fast. So eating regularly over the course of the day is a really good way to be more mindful. Make time to appreciate your food. Like, our food has probably come a long way before it made it to our plate. So just taking that time to appreciate your food, where it came from. Maybe if you made this awesome meal, just taking the time to appreciate your food, appreciating the person that created this meal for you, all of those things. Like I talked about, one of the 3 S's, sit down. Reduce distractions, right? How many times are we eating in front of the computer, in front of the TV, with a book in our hand, with our phone? You know, we have a rule in my house now: we don't put phones at the table, and it really helps us to be more mindful with our meals. Take several deep breaths before you begin to eat. Just check in. Pay attention to the sensations of eating, right? Your taste buds are on your tongue, they're not in your stomach. So taking that time to really enjoy every bite. Tasting, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of many years ago, I went to a mindful eating class. I don't know if the other dietitians on this call remember, but I think it was something with the Westchester Rockland Dietetic Association. We had a mindful eating class, and she had us practice eating 1 raisin, and it took us a long time to eat that 1 raisin, but what we finally did, it was the best tasting raisin I've ever tasted. So, you know, just really taking the time to enjoy your food can make it, you know, better for us and more fun for us. What do we say? Taste each bite of food that you put in your mouth. Experience the food's different taste and texture sensations. Feel your fullness. Take it. Oh, okay. I talked about this. Take that half time to check in with yourself. Are you hungry? Are you full? How are you feeling with your meal? And then acknowledge how your body feels after a meal. So the next piece is really applying that gentle nutrition. And I think this is where one of the misconceptions is with intuitive eating, that it's just eat whatever you want, because if you feel like eating cupcakes, just eat cupcakes all the time. And really, like, the gentle nutrition piece is a really important piece of it. Carbs are important. So a lot of times patients will come to me when they just get diagnosed with diabetes, and they're scared of carbohydrates. And I understand why, because if we go online, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there that will tell you to just cut out all your carbs. But really the truth is we need carbohydrates for brain function, for muscle function, and to get all the nutrients that we need in our meal and in the day. Some carbohydrates will keep your blood sugar more stable than others. So I have some examples of some carbohydrates that will keep your blood sugar more stable. So on the left over here, I have some farro, I have some oatmeal, some fruit with fiber, especially berries, can help keep your sugars more stable, some chickpeas, and then some whole wheat crackers. This is one way. This is a simple way that we can start thinking about how to build meals and snacks that will help keep our blood sugars more stable. And this model is flexible, right? So it's a starting place. It's the same thing with serving size. It's a starting place. It might not be the end, depending on what our activity looks like, what our day looks like. But this is a good place for most people to start. Half our plate with non-starchy vegetables. I gave some examples of what types of vegetables are non-starchy, but really you can pick whatever you like. The more variety of foods that we eat, the more nutrients that we get. So it doesn't mean that every day we have to eat a different vegetable, but the more that we eat a variety of different foods over the week, over the month, then we get a variety of nutrients. So the more colors we eat, the more nutrients that we'll ultimately get. So mix it up. And feel free, I didn't really talk about this in the rest of my presentation, but feel free to make those as flavorful as you want. It doesn't have to be boring. And I have some ideas of some ways that you can kind of set up your plate like this in a way that doesn't look so boring. A quarter of your plate would be your carbs, which could be something like tortillas or yams or potato, bread, pasta, quinoa, cereal. Any of the winter squashes would be more of a carbohydrate food. And then finally, we have our protein. So chicken, turkey, fish, beef, tofu, shrimp. This is a good starting off point with how to set up our meals. Half our plate with non-starchy vegetables, a quarter with our carb, and a quarter with our protein. And here's some examples. I love these pictures from the American Diabetes Association because I think sometimes when we show that picture of the plate method, it just looks kind of boring and kind of lame, but this really makes it more beautiful and gives you a ton of ideas for how you can really brighten up your meals, make it fun. Food isn't meant to be boring. We should be enjoying our food. You know, that's part of being human. So here's some cool ideas of ways to include color, and also it doesn't have to be on a plate, right? Like I had a patient earlier today. We were talking about how you can make a soup, right, and put lots of vegetables in that soup, and then you put your noodles and you put your protein, and that's another way to kind of incorporate this idea with the plate method and the proportions, but in a bowl form. So here's some meal ideas. And then snacks would be really similar. So same kind of idea. We're going to start with the carbohydrate and we're going to add protein or fat to help keep our sugars more stable. I'm going to talk about that in a little while, but here's some ideas. Same thing, the more variety of foods that we eat, the more nutrients that we get, and mix it up, make it fun. So I wanted to talk about some tricks that are going to balance out your blood sugar, because I think that these are a cool way that we can talk about how to eat with diabetes to help keep your blood sugar more stable. So when we're talking about these three food groups, fiber, protein, and fat, when we add these to our meal, we digest fiber, protein, and fat more slowly than we digest carbohydrates, right? Our carbohydrates, when we eat them, are our quick energy. That's why marathon runners eat carbohydrates before they run the marathon. So those are going to be digested more quickly, and we're going to use that. They're going to raise our sugar more quickly. But when we add foods that have fiber or protein or fat to our meal, that's really going to help slow down digestion, keep sugar more stable, and then also it makes it a more nutritionally balanced meal. So going back to that plate method, when we add these elements, then it's going to keep our sugars more stable. Usually I point out that fat usually isn't its own food group, usually, unless it's an avocado or something like that. It's usually not its own food group. So it might be some nuts, which are also protein. A lot of foods are a mix. So it's kind of hard to tease them apart in terms of protein, fiber, and fat. But yeah, usually fat is maybe the oil that we're cooking our food in, or the dressing that we're putting on our meal. So that's the first trick for balancing out blood sugar. I wanted to briefly talk about fiber because I think fiber is getting its moment now. I've been seeing it more online, but it's so important that we're eating enough fiber. The goal for women is 25 grams per day, and the goal for men is 38 grams. I would not suggest, if you're eating no fiber right now, don't go from 0 to 25 in one day, but gradually increase. There were so many benefits to fiber. I did not list them all, but some of the benefits are that they improve digestive health and make a healthy gut microbiome. They're great for blood sugar management. They improve cholesterol, lowers risk of some cancer. So really, really important that we're eating enough fiber. And just here's a few examples of foods that have fiber in them. Another trick for balancing out blood sugar, I love this one, is to eat your protein and vegetable before your carbohydrate. So in this example, we have some chicken, we have some broccoli, and we have some rice. If you eat the chicken and the broccoli before you eat your rice, it's going to help keep your blood sugar more stable. So that's so cool. We're not even changing really the amount that we're eating in this example. We're just changing the order of how we eat our meal. Another trick is to include resistant carbohydrates. So resistant carbohydrates, that includes things like beans, legumes, grains like oats, barley, brown rice, green bananas, plantains, potatoes, even cooking and cooling certain starchy foods like rice, pasta, potatoes that convert some of their starch into a resistant form. And the reason why we call them resistant carbohydrates is because they resist digestion in the small intestine, and instead they're fermented in the large intestine, so they're not going to raise our blood sugar as high. So that's another cool way that we can still eat carbohydrates but keep our blood sugar more balanced. And just here's some pictures, some examples. We have some quinoa, we have some cooked and cooled pasta. So one example with the pasta would be if you cook it the day before, you cool it off, and then if you reheat it the next day, it's still going to be a resistant starch. We have some lentils and some peas. I think probably all my patients know this trick because I talk about it with everyone. I love to talk about nutrition by addition. So instead of focusing on what can I take away from my meal that's going to increase my nutrition, instead we focus on what can I add. So for example, if you're going out to pasta, you're going out to some Italian dinner with your family and you have some pasta, we can add a protein and a vegetable to keep your blood sugars more stable. So we focus on what can I add to my meal. So maybe you want pizza for dinner tonight, but you want to help keep your blood sugars more stable. Maybe it's add some grilled chicken to it and have a side salad. And that's a way that's going to help keep your sugars more stable. And we can use that nutrition by addition for basically anything to remember what can I add to my food that's going to add some nutrition. Plan your meals ahead of time. So aim to eat within 1 to 2 hours of waking. If you go too long, then when you finally eat, you're going to get hungry or be hangry, right? So aiming to eat in 1 to 2 hours of waking, it's especially important depending on what medications that you're on and to help start off the day with your blood sugar stable. And then, like we talked about earlier, very important to eat every 3 to 4 hours to keep your blood sugar stable over the course of the day and to keep you from getting hangry, right? Sometimes when we go maybe 5 hours at one time without eating, when we finally eat, we're going to eat past fullness. We're not going to eat what we like. So giving yourself that opportunity to keep your blood sugar stable and eat enough over the course of the day. I'd say the number one thing that most of my patients would benefit from is planning ahead of time. So these are not all of the ideas that that are out there, but here's some ideas for planning your meals. Putting together a grocery list. It can be in like the notes section of your phone so that you can all share it and everyone can add to the grocery list together. Consider putting together a standard list of what you usually get at the store. So I usually get yogurt and bananas and oatmeal. Then you always have that when you get to the grocery store. Keep a digital list, Excel file, binder, whatever works for you of your favorite recipes. So that way, when everyone's trying to think, what are we going to make on Tuesday night? Then, you can just pull out that binder and then you have a list of some of your favorite recipes. Stock up on shelf-stable and frozen favorites like vegetables and rice and dried beans, all of those, canned beans, all of those are great options for things that you can have at home if you need them in a pinch. And one thing that you can do is consider theme meals. So Meatless Monday, Taco Tuesday, Homemade Pizza Friday, like all of those are a theme that, okay, every Monday you're going to have a meatless meal. So that's an easy way to plan it ahead of time. So the last piece of our intuitive eating, we talked about those four pieces, was joyful movement. And I like talking about joyful. First of all, I think joyful movement just sounds so much more fun than physical activity. But we really talk about using exercise as a tool to, instead of using exercise as a tool to manipulate your body, you're really focusing on what movement is going to make you happy, because the best exercise you can do is what you enjoy. We're focusing less on the calories and the steps and the miles, and maybe don't even wear your watch, and more about how your exercise feels. I think, when I think of movement, I always think of how great it is for our mental health, but of course, it's so important for diabetes management and to help keep your blood sugar stable and for physical health. And here's some ideas for what joyful movement might look like for you. It could be a yoga class, it could be a dance class, it could be dancing in your kitchen. I had a patient a while back who wanted to hula hoop. That sounds so fun. It could be rollerblading. And then I snuck in a picture of this race that I did out in Utah that was on top of like a beautiful mountain, and that I think definitely counts as joyful movement. So when we're talking about movement for diabetes management, we're really talking about, flexibility has its place, but really the two pieces that are going to help lower your blood sugars are cardiovascular movement. So that can be walking, dancing, hiking, hula hooping, bike riding, and that can really have an immediate effect on your blood sugar, but it can last up to 24 hours. So really, we can see such an impact with a little bit of movement after a meal. Even just going for a little walk, spending some time cleaning up, walking around the house after your meal, that can really make an impact on your blood sugar. And then strength training. So that could be lifting weights, body weight exercises, bands. That helps to lower insulin resistance that we were talking about earlier. So really decreasing the insulin resistance and making your insulin work better. And I have a resource here. If you want to try it, it's called Join. It's on YouTube. It's free body inclusive workouts. So if you'd like to try that, then it's called Join. So finally, using monitoring as a tool for your diabetes management. Using your glucometer is a great way to kind of test the impact that your food and your movement has on your blood sugars. It can really work in two ways. We don't want you to be obsessively checking how your blood sugar looks after you ate or after you moved, but it can work the other way. It can help you feel less stressed about the foods that you're eating and your blood sugars. Maybe you had a little bit of rice and as part of your balanced meal, and your sugar was in a good place. So then it's going to help you feel less stressed about, like, I can't eat rice because that's going to raise my blood sugars. Hopefully, using monitoring as that tool, whether it's a continuous glucose monitor or whether it's a manual glucometer, can help you feel less stressed about the foods you're eating and help you feel that you can eat a greater variety of foods. Other ways to manage your blood sugar. So taking medication is ordered, getting enough sleep, reducing stress. There's a lot more, but those are, some of the big ones. And really where to start, like I gave you a whole bunch of ideas for things that you can do, but what I would start with is pick that low-hanging fruit. Pick something that's going to make a big impact. Some examples might be to have a vegetable with your lunch 3 times a week, something really small. Drink a glass of water with breakfast. Go for a 10-minute walk at lunchtime or after dinner. Take your medication as ordered. Do a 3-minute meditation a couple times a week. Eat an energizing breakfast. Like, pick a small change that's going to make a big difference. Maybe it's some of those nutrition tricks, picking one of them. How to talk to your doctor about health at every size. So I think this is really important. I had a situation earlier this year that I felt very uncomfortable with the way that I, was being talked about with my weight. And I just think that it's really important for us to talk about, because you need to go to the doctor and you need to find a doctor that's going to talk to you the way that you want to be spoken to. And if it's most important that you feel comfortable enough to speak to your doctor, and if it means that you don't get weighed, and you're still going to the doctor, then that's a good thing. We want you to go to the doctor. We want everything else to be checked. So, and you can always ask for them not to weigh you. Most times they don't need your weight. There's only some medications that are weight-based. Otherwise, they might not need your weight. And if you do need to be weighed, you can ask for a blind weight. And you can always say, like, if they're focusing too much on your weight, you can always ask if you can talk about those healthy behaviors instead. So, it's really collaboration, right? When you come to see the dietitians here, we collaborate with you. We want to help you. We're really here to help coach you through. And the same thing with your doctor, it's a collaboration. Also, it's important to how you talk to yourself, right? Self-compassion. So, Kristen Neff is one of the leading researchers in self-compassion. I have some of her exercises there if you'd like to look at them. They're like little mini meditations up to maybe 10 minutes, but I think most of them are shorter than that. But the research really shows that when we're kinder to ourselves and we have strong self-esteem, we're more likely to engage in healthy behaviors. So we probably think, oh, if I beat myself up and I tell myself I'm so horrible and why did I do this, then it's going to kind of push us into eating better or engaging in healthier behaviors. But the truth is really the opposite. When we're kinder to ourselves, we're going to be more likely to engage in those healthy behaviors. So that's also a practice. But like I said, some of these exercises might be helpful if you need a place to start. And that self-compassion is associated with well-being, increased feelings of happiness, and greater personal initiative. I wanted to share this. This is some ways to measure your progress beyond the scale. So if you feel like you're really stuck with only measuring your weight, a lot of times what I would see, like for years when I started my as a dietitian, I would see patients that they had made so many awesome changes. Like they were exercising more and they were eating so much better. And because that number on the scale wasn't budging, they just felt so defeated. So I really created this list as a way to measure your progress beyond just that number on the scale. And I highlighted improved labs because, of course, in terms of diabetes management, A1C and blood sugars, that's really a great way that we can measure our progress. But any of these are great ways to measure, how you're progressing. Progress, not perfection, right? So we expect, I think this is in diabetes management, but also in life, right? We really expect everything to be on the up and up, but in reality, there's a lot of twists and turns, but we're still moving up, still moving forward, and it's a lot more about making progress, not everything being perfect. Just a little plug for us here at Community Health and Wellness. If you have any questions about your diabetes, or anything also nutrition related, then that is our phone number. If you are interested in this topic and you want to learn more, here are some of my favorite books. And here's some further resources and questions.
Why don't we leave the resources slide? That way people can take notes.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Melissa. And thank you so much for your presentation. Definitely a lot to absorb from there. And again, as we were saying in the beginning, you just need to pick one thing and start making changes from there. So I know it's a lot, but one might not be that much. So let's try. Okay, a few questions for you.
Sure.
One of the sentences that I hear all the time, and I agree with you, your pictures of your plates and your meals, they look yummy. But I'm sure that if you don't like vegetables, you're gonna be like, ugh. So what do we do when we don't like vegetables?
Okay, where I always start is when was the last time that you tried that vegetable? So if someone told me that they tried cauliflower the last time when they were 8 years old, it's time to try it again. Because like there's so many ways to add flavor and just make it in a different way than maybe we didn't have when we were younger, depending on who the cook was in our family. Maybe it's time to just try it a different way. So I think that's always a good place to start, is just trying it a different way, flavoring it different ways. I would never tell someone that they should eat something that they don't like, but at least try it.
Like I like to say, right, there is not such thing as a bad food. It's only a bad recipe.
It's
You know,
true, or a bad cook.
I used to hate the spinach because my mom used to make cream of spinach. It was the most disgusting thing ever as I was growing up. And then I tasted a spinach in a salad and I thought it was the most delicious lettuce I ever had. So, so yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
I know that cooking is important. You know, it helps you measure your calories, see what's in the food and all of that. We all know that probably. But there are people who can't cook. Like they're very, no matter what, I mean, you will burn the water if that's the case. Or there are some other people that just don't have time, you know, between work and school and your kids and your second job. What do we do?
Yeah, so going back to that progress, not perfection, maybe if you're eating out every single meal, eating at home can be an easier way to control what you're putting in your meals. And it's cheaper and like there's a lot of benefits. So I would say starting really small, right? It doesn't have to be like all of a sudden you're making a every single meal home cooked, but starting really small and grabbing simple ingredients. Maybe it's like a can of tuna, maybe it's a rotisserie chicken, maybe it's getting the rice that's frozen in the supermarket, or already cooked but just frozen. Maybe it's some frozen vegetables, something. I'm a huge fan of like the vegetables that are already all cut up in the supermarket. Just make it easier for yourself, and then it's the same thing. It's a practice, right? So the more that you cook, the better that you're going to get. And you can really make it your own in terms of like how, extensive you want your cooking to be and how complicated you want it to be. But really make it your own and start small.
Melissa, I'm gonna go back to the rotisserie chicken because it's one
Uh-huh.
of my favorites. So when you get a rotisserie chicken, you're not eating out because you're bringing it home. That's the
Yeah.
takeout.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking like in the supermarket, the rotisserie chicken. And
Yes.
then that you can use for so many different meals, right? Like maybe you make like a chicken salad out of it. Maybe you throw it in a wrap. Maybe, you can use the bones and make it into a chicken soup. So like using all the aspects of it and making it fun and interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I love arroz con pollo. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's great if that doesn't count as takeout because, I think it's very good.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people who say, well, but the minute I start exercising, I start gaining weight. So I don't like to exercise. What do you think about that?
Well, I think starting with um like necessarily like maybe getting away from even weighing themselves might be a good place to start, like just give yourself space away from that scale. The other thing I think of is that and that's an issue that we see with BMI, right? Like a bodybuilder is going to be in a way higher BMI than technically his body might show, or her body might show, because muscle weighs more than fat. So that's something else. And also, going back to those non-scale wins, like do you feel when you go to the gym, are you able to walk up the stairs faster? Are you able to, did you PR in your race? Are you able to lift more weight? Are you able to like lift up your grandchildren and feel better about that? So those are all ways to measure progress in the gym. Do your blood sugars look better
Mhm,
after you exercise? Those are all better ways to measure progress than just that number on the scale.
mhm. And what about menopause? Do you think that menopause also plays a role in, diabetes, pre-diabetes, weight gain, obesity?
Absolutely, absolutely. My brain has been on this way much more, so much more than it used to be. I think we're talking about this a lot more
Yeah.
than we used to be, and I hope that there's more research to be done on menopause, because I think this is something we don't truly understand. But yes, I hear this from a lot of my patients who are in that age range, and it really comes down to the same things, and maybe then that's a great time to not focus so much on that number on the scale and just really focus on how you're feeling. Because I think it can be tough that maybe we're not going to go back to the weight that we were in high school, and that's okay. You can be just as healthy.
Yeah. And people are saying here that many people now like roasted Brussels sprouts, which is true. You
Yeah.
see them more at restaurants, and I wish I knew how to make. I'm only made them twice, but they don't taste as good as they taste in the restaurant. I have
You
to
know
say.
what? I made them actually this week in the air fryer and they came out so good. So good.
It
Just
came out crispy in the outside because that's what I
crispy.
like. I haven't
Crispy.
gotten.
You know what my trick is? I put them in the microwave. I mean, it smells up the whole house, but it's fine. Like I put them in the microwave for like 3 minutes just to get them a little bit cooked inside, and then in the air fryer. I mean, the ones I bought were pretty mini, but they got so crispy.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Oh,
maybe not
that's
as good as
good.
fried.
No, maybe I'm gonna try that. Yeah, because I like them crispy in the outside. Mine were nice, but they weren't crispy. So okay, good.
Yeah, air fryer.
Okay, let me see if I see something else. Seasoning is the answer. Balsamic vinegar for balsamic vinegar for
Ooh,
Brussels
thanks,
sprouts.
Edith.
I need I need to know a good brand for balsamic vinegar also. Okay. Well, to all of our attendees, thank you so much. And of course, to Melissa, thank you. This was a great community chats. Thank you for all the information that you shared and all the energy and so much more. And also, I want to invite everyone to come next week because, as Melissa said, next week we're going to be talking about, Melissa.
More nutrition tricks. Elizabeth has some really good ones. She told me a little bit about her presentation yesterday, and it's going to be a good one. So you have to tune
Yes.
in.
Yes, exactly. And then the week after, we're going to talk about all the non-weight, non-nutrition tricks, things like sleep and mood and stress and all of that. So please join us for the next two community chats. And in the meantime, enjoy this beautiful weather if you like it this cold, but not this dark. And I'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.